CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
Victoria's is one of 3 by-elections to be held on Monday, and Liberal leadership candidate Justin Trudeau has been stumping for the Liberals in all 3 campaigns, including the stop in Victoria we showed you Wednesday. He may not have helped out much in Calgary Centre, though, with comments that he made 2 years ago about Alberta. In Vancouver today, Trudeau apologized.
I was wrong to relate the area of the country that Mr. Harper is from with the people who live there and with the policies that he has that don't represent the values of most Canadians.
Trudeau says he's sorry for a 2010 interview in which he said the country has suffered because Albertans control what he calls the socio-democratic agenda. Trudeau says he was using verbal shorthand to criticize the Prime Minister, not the people of Alberta. Souk Road was closed for several hours last night after a head-on crash that sent 2 people to the hospital suffering serious injuries. Emergency responders were called to the stretch of Souk Road near Cooper's Cove. Just before 7 o'clock, 2 vehicles had collided head-on. RCMP say the crash forced one car off the road, the other to flip onto its side. When the fire crews first arrived on the scene, both drivers were trapped. There was smoke coming from the car in the ditch. Both drivers had to be extricated from their vehicles and rushed to the hospital.
What we do know is there was one driver in each vehicle. Both sustained serious injuries and were taken to the hospital by ambulance. At this point, it does not appear that alcohol was a factor. As for speed, I'm not able to comment. That's something we'll be able to determine when the crash analyst is concluded here.
A 38-year-old man from Souk and a 38-year-old Victoria man are both recovering in Victoria General Hospital. The cause of the crash is under investigation. 3 fire departments spent nearly 9 hours fighting the flames at a sawmill in Port Alberni last night. Port Alberni, Beaver Creek and Sproat Lake fire crews were called out after fire broke out at the Western Forest Products Alberni Pacific Division. The first flames were spotted just after 5. The spark ignited a fire inside a dust collection system, and it spread 3 stories high in part of the facility. Firefighters say they had the flames under control, but it took a while to douse the smoldering sawdust.
Mill staff had isolated the building. There was never any danger that the fire would get out of hand. It was contained to that facility. But just the nature of the structure made it difficult to get all the hot spots. So we were on scene for several hours, just trying to extinguish the blaze that was smoldering inside the sawdust. But there was no injuries. There was never any risk that the fire would spread from that facility.
The cause of the fire at the mill is still under investigation tonight. Well, today is Molly Campbell's 2nd birthday. The little girl's in Vancouver undergoing cancer treatment, as we've told you, for the 2nd time in her short life. But today the Victoria family got some good news, and they say they couldn't have asked for a better birthday present for their daughter. Today, doctors told the family that Molly's latest tests show she has only 2% leukemic cells. And Molly's oncologists say that's a great sign. It shows the course of chemotherapy that she's on right now seems to be working. The toddler is also well enough to be an outpatient, so she doesn't have to stay at BC Children's Hospital. And Molly celebrated today with a cupcake. She was diagnosed with leukemia, you'll recall, on Christmas Eve, 2010. Well, the province is instituting an emergency fund that's intended to support First Nations people as they pursue post-secondary education. The fund will be established with an initial $2 million to be made available to Aboriginal people who need emergency support to help pay bills and support their families while they continue post-secondary studies. The province says the fund will help First Nations people see their education through.
Many Aboriginal students live on the edge of poverty. Of course, many of them live in poverty. Many of them live on the edge of dire poverty. And when an unexpected circumstance comes up that requires the spending of money, it can topple over their financial balance and force them to leave school.
We worked with the universities and the colleges and came up with this as the solution, as a way to keep them retain them in the post-secondary institutions to ensure they do graduate.
The program was established after a 4-year national research project that was conducted by UVic and the federal government. The project was hailed a success when students said they felt at home in the UVic Aboriginal community and then pushed on to earn their post-secondary degree. Well, truckloads of support rolled into the Our Place shelter in downtown Victoria today, all the way from the west coast of Vancouver Island. Members of the Ahousaht First Nation and Nuu-Chulnith communities brought warm winter clothing and blankets and non-perishable food items to help the homeless. And there was a traditional feast held to celebrate and to welcome people in need.
Well, it's important that for us as a house, more specifically, is that we have a lot of members going through here and that frequent here, elders, somebody's brother, sister, and children even come through here that belong to our members, and it's important that we reconnect with them and that they're not forgotten, that they're not lost. And that if we can make that connection today, that would be good to the family members out there. And for those that are watching that do know people that are having tough times, now's a good time to connect and make the connection, set aside the differences.
Our place serves more than 1,200 meals a day. The shelter is always taking donations of non-perishable food items and gently used clothing. And if you have anything to offer, you can drop it off at 919 Pandora Avenue. Police officers from across the province were honored at Government House last night for acts of merit and valor. BC's Lieutenant Governor Judith Guichon and Justice Minister Shirley Bond presented the awards at the 32nd Annual Police Honours Night. There were 34 officers handed awards of merit for going above and beyond, including 3 RCMP members from Vancouver Island. 25 awards of valor were distributed to officers who put themselves in extreme danger to save others. The highest award a police officer can receive in our province. Victoria Police Constable Lane Douglas Hunt was one of them. She fought off an attacker armed with a knife outside the 7-Eleven store on Lower Douglas Street in January of last year.
As I was leaving the 7-Eleven, I was attacked by a man with a knife and ended up being in the fight for my life that day. I've had phenomenal use of force instructors and good training through the department. So I was lucky that I was able to use it to save my life that day.
Victoria's Chief of Police says the award and the experience last night is an honor that officers will never forget.
Well, this is absolutely huge for these are street level officers that serve Victoria and Esquimalt every day, who have distinguished themselves, and to come to to Lieutenant Governor's home and be recognized in such a formal manner. I've been coming to these events for many years, but it is a thrill of a lifetime for the officers involved, I know.
A retired Deputy Commissioner was also honored with a certificate for outstanding service. Vancouver Island aircraft manufacturer Viking Air has won top honors at the British Columbia Export Awards. Viking has won Exporter of the Year and also received the Premier's Award for Job Creation. Viking increased its workforce by more than 300% between 2009 and 2011. The growth came as the company geared up to begin delivering the updated version of the de Havilland Twin Otter and Beaver aircraft to markets overseas. Viking says its exports will reach about $400 million, covering some 18 countries over the next 4 years. One of the most respected and recognized political journalists in Canada received the country's highest honor today at Rideau Hall in Ottawa. Our congratulations go to colleague and friend Craig Oliver, CTV's senior parliamentary correspondent, inducted today into the Order of Canada. Generic drugs will soon cost you less. The province is bringing in a new pricing formula in April. In the first year, the formula will bring down the cost of generic drugs to 25% of their brand name equivalent and will drop to just 20% by April of 2014. Right now, we pay 35% of the brand name price for a generic drug. The new formula is expected to save the pharmacare program $110 million over the next 2 years. Concerns over spending have eroded consumer confidence in Canada for a second straight month. In fact, Canadians are feeling increasingly negative about their financial situation, and British Columbia is leading the way. The Conference Board of Canada says regionally, BC saw the largest drop in consumer confidence, falling 12.5 points to 91.2. Now, across the country, the Consumer Confidence Index was down 0.8 points to 80.3 in November. The numbers really add up to this. The report suggests that Canadians are concerned about spending, but they are more confident that the economy is turning around and that financial better times may be just around the corner. Those loonies jingling in your pocket or purse will buy almost as much as they did a year ago. StatsCan says the inflation rate was just 1.2% in October. That's a little higher than some economists had expected, but not enough to trigger a round of interest rate hikes. In BC, inflation dropped to 0.5% rather, from 0.7% the month before. Inflation in Victoria is sitting at 0.3%. That is down from 0.6%. And some more numbers for you. Canada's national debt is about to reach $600 billion. Almost $17,200 for every person in the country. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation says the debt level will reach that mark on Saturday night. The group blames the Harper government's stimulus spending for the increase. Students at the University of Victoria got soaked today, and they were chilly in a dunk tank in Centennial Square. This was the scene not far from where Astrid is right now. Earlier today, students taking a dip in the chilly dunk tank this afternoon in support of the Kool-Aid Society. For a cash donation, anyone walking by had a chance to soak a student.
It's going to the Victoria Kool-Aid Society, which fights against homelessness in downtown Victoria. And they've given us a few goals of what the money can be used for. We're hoping to raise $5,000 to give, I think, 60 pair of work boots and bus passes so that people can work construction jobs.
The Kool-Aid Society provides services for more than 10,000 homeless people every year. A group of Vancouver Islanders is going to great lengths to help a man who is waiting for a lung transplant. Runners are lacing up from Courtenay to Bowser for the Run for Lungs fundraiser. The run was created to help raise money for Michael Gojovic. The Sunshine Coast man was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, a disorder that causes scarring on the lungs. Michael's been told by doctors that he only had a month or two to live without a transplant. His sister says she'll do anything to spend Christmas with him.
I can't give up on my brother. I know my brother isn't going to give up, and I'm not going to give up. You know, you do it. You just do what you got to do. And I hope, if this maybe gives inspirations to others, you know, to just keep going. And please register. Please go to the organ transplant on the web and register as an organ donor.
Mike Gojovic is currently in Vancouver. He's waiting for a lung transplant. If you'd like to donate or find out more or figure out how you can help, visit mikeslungs.com.